As I was saying, I feel I'm in that Chicago theater about to be shot.
Just don't dust any paintings, you'll be fine. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the podcast, because I think many of you out here know their work on the screen, but one of the most incredible things that the two of you have been doing for the last while is this incredible series of discussions with filmmakers. Can you talk about why you started doing it and sort of the place it holds in your lives?
Well, we started doing it after we were doing some publicity for 1917, because we would do these Q&As afterwards and then get asked the same questions. And I thought, oh, well, maybe we do a podcast and just answer it. But then and then lockdown came, so we had plenty of time. And then as we started doing it, it sort of developed on its own, because it did become conversations, and it was fun for us too, because we were getting to ask all these questions that were kind of naturally curious. So we got to ask all these questions like, how do you do what you do, and why do you do it that way? And it just kind of roller coastered. And then we decided we'd stop because we had to do 1917. So yeah, Empire of Light, sorry, you're right. And we were out in the world again suddenly, and people were saying, oh, I really like the podcast. So we went, uh-oh, we got to do it again.
We're trapped.
I've seen a pattern on the show where the guests always want to ask you two questions too, which happens every time. So I wanted to talk a little bit about your communication on set, because you collaborate on all your projects, and it's been kind of a great thing to see the last couple of days. You've been working with a lot of students, and you have this sort of shorthand between the two of you. A few of my crew members noticed it, how I think it was described as you talk without talking. Can you talk a little bit about your collaboration on set and sort of what you enjoy about it?
Well,
Being together.
Yeah, we like being together. I actually really love solving problems. That's always been what I've liked to do. So there's plenty of problems on a film set. And basically my aim is to allow Roger to just be looking through the camera and into whatever he's shooting, and I'm dealing with everything else that might be coming up that day or next week or the following week. And I think also, since we work together and live together, we don't have to talk so much anymore.
Yeah, it was interesting on this film as well, because at the same time we were trying to time Jarhead that we'd done with Sam Mendes. So James was going back and forth to LA. I was going back at weekends while we were shooting, which was a bit awkward, to time Jarhead and stuff. So it's a huge amount to do on some films. So I was just thinking of that one.
Yeah, the thing is that working with him, I don't have his eye, but I know what it is that he wants. So when we were doing this one, and I would go into LA during the week to try and keep track of the grade or the timer to make sure, because a lot of times they go off on their own path, and to bring it back to what he wanted, because I knew what he wanted, and then he'd come on the weekends and we'd go a little further, and then I would come back and supervise it. So it was interesting.
I've noticed also this week that you guys seem to have, like with the shorthand, be on the same page, but I'm curious what happens when you disagree.
I win. No. I'm kidding, Roger. I'm kidding. No.
Yeah, that's true, isn't it?
We generally, though, don't disagree that much.
I'm just trying to think when we had last.
Yeah.
Not really.
We don't. Well, I think because before we even accept a job, we read the script together or separately, but then we talk about it. So we kind of go into it with the same ideas. And as you go through and prep, that's the whole time where you're figuring out what it is, and it goes back and forth, but we're doing it together, so we basically have the same viewpoint.
Great. And Roger, you did make films before you and James got together. How's your process changed since you've started collaborating with James?
Well, it just, it just happened slowly. I mean, while we were still shooting film and timing on film, it just happened slowly that James became more and more involved and started giving up scripting because that sort of made us apart. And then I think when the DI came across, you know, when the sort of the post-production started to get more and more complicated, and especially when we started shooting with the digital camera, I mean, there's so much more that needs to be overseen, you know.
But it also, it means that you can focus on what's in front of you, and sometimes also when post is happening, when you're in the middle of the next shoot, there are a lot of things that you really have to follow through on the post, and to try and do that and shoot at the same time is really hard.
Well, I just think of this film, and this was shot on film, and you know, it was a very tough schedule, you know. I mean, actually, you know, James was helping keeping me sane, you know. I mean, it was a very hard shoot.
Hard job on that one.
It was a hard job. And, you know, I mean, you're spending the whole day concentrating, and I operate, right? So I'm there with my key people and on set, and just, it's a very frantic shoot. That was particularly... That's the short version. You should have seen the long version, which I actually love, but it doesn't exist anymore.
Is there any talk of it coming back? I know everyone talks about the mythical.
Andrew's quite happy with this version, but I'm sort of partly joking. We did see the first cut. It wasn't a rough cut. It was a cut, and it was like, it was nearly 4 hours.
Yeah,
it was
close. Yeah.
But it was really beautiful. I mean. Most of what's being taken out is after Jesse James is killed, and it follows Bob Ford, and it follows Z, Jesse James's wife. You go to the funeral, and
Frank.
Someone tried to assassinate Z at the funeral, and that follows Frank, you know, Sam Shepard, who took tourists around his ranch up in New England somewhere, and they would pay to see the great outlaw and is living on this ranch. And there's all these little details of life, and that, I mean, I'm going on now. That's what I love about the film. It brings in the whole sense of history and passing and the connections. And I sort of regret it's not there, but the book still exists. The book that the film is based on, The Assassination of Jesse James, by Ron Hansen, is very much what the film is. It's all those sort of texturals of that period. It's really interesting.
I also think that the studio had a hard time thinking, well, what is the story after Brad Pitt dies? I mean, and yet that was in the title, that it was about Bob.
He's up. We built this. Creed was built up in the Rockies. I mean, the whole town was built for the film. It's amazing. And there was this great big kind of like big bridge over this canyon. And Bob Ford had an affair with this other woman, this other girl, well, an older woman. And there were all these kind of existentialist conversations. And anyway, eventually she committed suicide off this bridge. I mean, it's all fact, it's all true. And it's all those sort of, all that colour and nuance. I really kind of miss it myself, but there.
And it really was a film about Bob and about this need to be famous and then getting it and it not giving him what he thought it would. So it was a more interesting film that way.
Yeah, as you were saying that about all the other characters, it has this sort of ensemble feel to it at certain points in the film. And then you have, you know, who's the main character? Is it Bob? Is it Jesse? But then, you know, in watching it again today, I watched it again this week as well, it feels like an unconventional love story as well between the two of them. I think that there's the moment where Jesse says, you know, I'm not sure if you want to be like me or you want to be me. And I feel like that was a central theme throughout the film. And we're going to dive into it because I know that you work very much off of story, and that's sort of what drives your choices. But before we get to that, how did you get involved with this project to begin with? I know you said you read through the script, you sort of decide together. What was it about this project that made you excited to work on it?
I don't know where it came from. I mean, Andrew just approached me, but I have no idea. I have no idea why. I mean, I didn't know him before. But I mean, you know, I read the book and I was just kind of, hey, come on, it's just a beautiful, beautiful piece. And I love films that are not sort of linear narratives, that they're this one's almost a tone poem of an age, and I love westerns. I love Sam Peckinpah westerns, and I feel stylistically it's kind of different, but in what it's trying to say and the world it's trying to present and the idea of the world changing and you can't stop it, and Jesse James realizes he's outlived his time. Well, that's very much the Wild Bunch, but just told in a very different way,
James, you said to me this week that you're the kind of person that is always moving forward, that you don't like looking back. You're laughing. I was listening.
I did say that.
I feel like that's true of your life and your work together. And I think the two of you are also known for embracing the new. Like the new technology is going to digital, and there was some really interesting choices that you two made in this film in terms of the look of it. Can you talk a little bit about the Deakinizers and how they were developed and sort of, the very unique things about this film in terms of its look?
Well, it's very
what they are.
Yeah, it's very much Andrew. I mean, he had and a lot of it comes from the book, the feeling of the book, but Andrew had very, very, very well thought out idea of what he wanted of the film, the look of the characters, that they all wore black, that all the horses were black, which wasn't easy at night when you're trying to shoot. And the Deakins as well. I mean, it sort of was logically a way of recreating the sort of effect of a pinpoint camera, pinhole camera, and the final image of Jesse James that actually exists. Well, there's two images of him that actually exist, and it was trying to get that. And both of us actually, when we were watching the cut together in a cutting room, both of us regretted we didn't use it more, that effect. We started off just using it as a sort of the link pieces, so it became kind of, the postcards between different scenes or setting up a different location. And the studio got back to us when they were watching dailies and said, "Can you please not use that all the time?" and I think it made us we sort of censored ourselves a bit, and we both regret it at the end. It's a shame.
But the thing, too, about the lenses is it wasn't something that you could do in post, because what it's doing to the colors as well as the focus was...
Chromatic aberration.
Yes.
I think that's what it's called. I'm not very technical.
For the members of the audience who don't know, can you talk a little bit about how you made the lenses, how you built them?
Well, it was years ago. I was doing a cinema short in London, and I took apart a stills lens and took a front element of stills lens and put it on the front of in front of my 50mm on a 35mm camera, and got that kind of effect. That was years and years ago. So when Andrew said, "Well, let's try and replicate this sort of pinhole sort of look," we took that idea to Otto Nemitz, a camera rental house that I've always used in LA. And and they tried the same thing and made up some lenses that were doing it. We had 3 different lenses, didn't we?
And then after the movie, they called me up and said, "Do you mind if we rent them?" And they do. They rent them in LA.
We use them on commercials. God knows why.
So you said that you regretted not using them more. When did you decide to use them? Like when, do you know certain shots you were going to use them, or just throw them on, get this shot, or? Well,
I'd say the kind of linking shots, when Bob's riding towards the farmhouse, when a lot of those landscapes, that are interstitials with the kind of voiceover, the rocking chair and that. And we also use swing and tilt lenses, which probably people know, that shift the plane of focus. There's different ways to just not make it look like a painting, but deliberately make it look like a picture. In fact, usually I don't like that. Usually I think I want the audience to be totally immersed in the image, but this was a way of saying, no, this is a portrait of a past,
Well, and it also, because the language of the book was so lyrical and it was going to be used as voiceover, it kind of steered the movie in a slightly different direction.
It does go with the language, doesn't it? I mean, listening to it again, I find the language is just extraordinary, beautiful.
And it's also the wavy glass also fits with
that.
We
did things like that. We deliberately, actually it wasn't, we got some period glass, but actually what they did, I got the painter to get some varnish and paint over the glass to make those waves.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It was interesting how you used the wavy glass both to shoot through And then there's also the textures on the back wall that are a little reminiscent of In Cold Blood, and also made me think a little bit about the water ceilings in Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
That's interesting, yeah. But also, as Roger was saying, Andrew, the director, is also very visual. And so he had his vision in his head. And sometimes when you work with the director and they say, okay, I want the scene to be dark, there are different definitions of dark. And on the train sequence, when you said to him, you're all right with this being dark, and he says, yes, being pitch black is fine.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting because watching it now, there's no cut in that when you push in from behind Brad and then it's black and then the train starts coming. It's actually one shot. They're not cutting it. I was thinking, why didn't they cut? We could have done it separately.
We're going to talk more about the train sequence in a minute.
Sorry, we're taking you out of
Oh,
order.
no, you're good. You're good. I'm going to go on it, but I'm going to quote Roger from this week too, because I know he loves it. So this week you said, in a few different ways, you said there's a million ways to do something, and they're all right and they're all wrong.
Probably all wrong.
Who knows? Can you talk a little bit about, because as you said a lot this week too, it's about the play, it's about the collaboration, it's about sort of following your gut in the moment. So the story is obviously a huge influencing factor on how this film looks. There's so much of the emotional action that needs to be captured in the faces of these actors. I mean, it's just the performances with Casey and Brad are just incredible. Can you talk a little bit about how the choices that you made in this film were motivated by the story and sort of, how you worked through those?
Well, I mean, we had a lot of time. We didn't have a huge, long prep, but we had time scouting locations and talking. I mean, this is basically shot in Calgary, up in the Rockies there, in Edmonton and Winnipeg. So it's quite diverse places we were shooting. So we did spend quite a bit of time, scouting these places and driving around, trying to find remote locations. And just all that time, you're just talking about it. There's nothing else you're going to be doing. And then we had time in the office, sketching ideas, working with a storyboard artist, and we all got images that we thought were kind of relevant to different scenes in the film. So by the time we came close to shooting in the corridor of the production office, you could walk down the hallway and kind of see the movie as you went down. No images were exactly this going to look like this, going to look like this, but the sort of feel of it, the kind of color of it, and just the whole feel of it. I remember Andrew had some Polaroids he'd taken, years ago, just old faded Polaroids, and just odd things that kind of like, they hold the essence of the film in them, but they're not strictly, you couldn't say, oh, that looks exactly like that frame, nothing like that,
I feel like this film is also a study of contrasts. Like you have the white snow and the black horses and the black costumes. And one of my favorite contrasts is when Jesse goes to Ed Miller's house, which is this just like falling apart kind of rat's nest. And Jesse comes in and he's wearing this beautiful costume and all black. And you lit him so softly in the most beautiful way. And to me, that soft light on his face with the set is such an incredible contrast. But I feel like that was a theme throughout the film, was these contrasts.
Well, that scene in particular, that was interesting actually, because when we got with that, we had built that hut on location so we could shoot Jesse coming down the hill and all that and coming into the hut. And there was like literally 2 foot of snow on the ground because it was like late in our schedule. So we tried to dig it out, but then we thought, well, how are we going to do that? The whole hill, so we had to take it. Overnight, they took it into a warehouse, basically rebuilt it in a warehouse. And as we were started shooting, I had the painter still painting the backdrop so that you had something out the window, or not the doorway as they're sitting there. But anyway, that was beside the point. It was a nightmare shooting it. But no, but what I wanted with I wanted that kind of slightly white, ghostly look in his face. I wanted him to feel like, a spectre, a kind of ghost, you know. So it's kind of, I was looking at this time and then remembering that's why I did it, and I was thinking, well, was that too flatly, softly lit, or so? I don't know, but that's why I did it at the time. I mean, it's interesting you watch a film, because I look at it now and I think some of the scenes I really didn't like when we were timing it, just from my point of view, actually I really like now, like in the theatre. I think that actually looks quite good. And then I look at some others and go, oh God, you know, that's...
Which ones did you not like before that you like today?
Which ones did I not like before? Well, I said I didn't used to like the theatre, but watching it this time, the Chicago Theatre, I thought it was quite good.
Yeah.
There was a wonderful exterior we did, actually, but it's not there.
The opening has this beautiful montage of shots where he's walking like through the city, he's sitting at the table, it goes in the bar, it goes to the barbershop. And I'm wondering, like, in terms of those kinds of shots, were those all shot listed, or were those things that you gathered as you went, and was that all planned out ahead of time?
No, the first shots where he's standing in the landscape and the sun's going down, and then there's the fire. Well, we knew we were going to light a fire, and they'd rigged that. But that was a pre-production day. We went out in the field. It was just Andy, myself, our AD was there, Scott, I think, and Andrew and Brad, and we were just in the field finding it, you know. And it was I thought it was a wonderful shot of the corn stalks, and there's a spider up there, and there's Jesse smoking a cigar out of focus in the back. You know, they're just sort of found shots, really.
Yeah, and I've read something once that said that you're kind of known for, when there's downtime, just sort of grabbing a camera and getting insert shots or getting other shots that you sort of see. How much of that happened on this set?
Was a bit on that, but we had we had a second camera operator. Well, it is a Steadicam operating, really, Damon Moreau, and we would set him up, you know, in a room with a rocking chair and you know, 7 frames a second, just stay there all day and see what you get, you know, and that kind of thing. Send him out to shoot a sky as it was changing if we liked it, and that kind of thing. Yeah, so sometimes I would do it at lunchtimes as well, but I mean, most of the time it was Damon working, you know, like just down the field from where we were shooting or something, you know, picking up something we'd seen.
On that shoot, too, the hours were really long, so there wasn't a lot of free time.
Let's talk about the train robbery. This is one of my favorite sequences of any film. I think what's striking about it is even before the train gets there, you have these incredible close-ups of like Jesse's boot on the track and like the rocks falling, and then he puts his head on the rails. It's just so beautifully composed and put together, and then the light through the trees and how it, you know, it's sort of changing the shadows going across. So I'm curious if we could just walk through some of those images and how you got them, because in looking at them, I don't know. Like, how did the lights in the trees work? And then I think also, you know, shooting through the sparks of the train.
Yeah, and if you watch it closely, it's the same shot twice just to get a longest bit of take in the film, because we didn't get a very long take, so he's just doubled it up, and you never notice really, but I noticed, but you don't. No, that was all storyboarded. We knew we had to storyboard that. Apart from some of the stuff with Sam in the train where we were following with a Steadicam, but we knew we were following him with a Steadicam, and then we just created some sort of shots at the time. But most of that build-up and everything was storyboarded. And I was James saying, there was a whole conversation. Okay, how dark do you want it, Andrew? You know, is it okay if he's just like this face lit by this oil lamp and the blackness, you know, and then you push in and there's nothing, and gradually the light of the train comes along, you know. Yeah, so it's all sort of worked out. Andrew was really frustrated because that train is tiny, and
Very
he wanted
dinky.
a really huge, heavy-looking train. So, I mean, the whole shoot, he kept bringing up how we had to shoot a toy train. And I get it. So the big thing was we can't light the train, but let's put a light on the train. you know, which makes sense. It has a light, but it's much more exaggerated than the light that really was there. So we took the light that was really there off and put up a 5K PAR, you know, a tungsten PAR, which had actually just come on the market, I think, very recently, really quite recently. And it's all on a remote dimmer. So as the train gets closer to the camera, the lights dim down. Otherwise, it would be blasting the lens too much, you know, and all that. And then, and you know, you just kind of build on things. But we were really lucky that on the night of the shoot, the wind was awful, and I was thinking, I'm going to have to put some light on the trees, otherwise we don't know where we are, and that light on the train's not going to be able to be very bright because it will hit the lens too hard. And then gradually the wind went down, and I was putting some atmosphere in, or the effects guy I was putting some atmosphere in, and it just the wind just died completely. So there was enough atmosphere that you could shoot into the light without it flaring the lens. And so a lot of luck, really. But to do when the gang were in the forest, we didn't use the train to bring the light in. We had a platform, you know, that was one of those. Well, no, actually, it was a motor-driven platform. So we put a light on that, and so it panned, because in reality you couldn't. The train light wouldn't have lit that far into the trees, you know. So it's all a lot of cheats, you know.
It's a great cheat.
And you know, the dialogue between them when they're eating, that was all by the actors.
Beginning, yeah.
The improvising. So we had no idea what that was going to be.
Wow. So, and then the train pushing the camera. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, well, that was kind of like, okay, how are we going to do that? We'll have a platform car, and then we'll have a track on it, and as it gets there, we'll have a jib arm, and then we can pull back and all that, and it was all getting too much of a nightmare. And I said, well, we got like 20 shots to shoot tonight, so just give me a piece of foam. I'll put a piece of foam on the front of the flatbed. I put the camera on a piece of foam and handheld it, and I said, if we get in trouble, I can pull the camera away. And the train hit the foam on the flat car. There's a little bump, and off we went. It was fine.
Just a little bump. We only have a couple minutes before I get to some of the audience questions, but I'm curious. There's so many frames in this film, and in so many of your films, that like your eye for composition. One of the shots that really jumped out at me. It's a really kind of a simple shot, but it's the scene after Jesse's crying when he's roughed up the cousin, the boy, and he gets on the horse and he rides up the hill, and you've got this like diagonal horizon line at the top of the hill with the sun just over the ridge, and then he rides diagonally across and goes right through the sun. First of all, like, did you have like 3 minutes to get that shot?
Well, you could just move to find where the sun was, but then we would. Somebody was up the top of the hill to tell. I don't know. I don't think it was Brad riding a horse. I think it was a rider, and some at the top of the hill just saying where to ride towards, and then he disappeared, ducked down, and then the rider took it up towards the sun. So you had some flexibility, but we knew we were going to do that shot because it's a lovely little dead tree on the right-hand side of frame, and then with the sun going down. We knew that. We knew that from scouting the farm, but that was kind of interesting because we wanted the snow. So we had to build sort of a lot of flexibility into the schedule because we wanted the snow at the end of the shoot, but we also wanted, you know, this kind of almost summery feel with the cornfields and stuff at the beginning. So it was a very difficult shoot to kind of schedule. And then the scene where Ed Miller is shot, you know, the story flashing back to Jesse James killing Ed Miller. We couldn't shoot that. We were snowed out in Canada, so we actually shot that north of LA in a big field, you know, when we got back to LA, yeah.
So in terms of your compositions, the other day I asked you, did you get a chance to go out and shoot any photographs? And you said, I shot one and I don't like it.
Yeah, I don't know why I shot it really, but yeah, no.
So in terms of how you decide what your composition is going to be, do you have an approach to what you're looking for your frames, either in films or in photographs?
I think it's very instinctual. I've seen you you know, when you're trying to find it and we're about to go and then you move it slightly and it's right.
Yeah, it's not there till you push the button, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I mean, but you're talking about it a lot. You're talking about the storyboards. You're talking about what is it cut to. I think this is not thought about enough. You know, you shoot one shot there, you've got to know what you're doing on the turnaround, or if you're doing a turnaround, or if you're doing a wide shot. It's all part of the flow, so not one shot is standalone by itself, not many times anyway.
All right, my last question before we get to some audience ones. In working with the students this week, Roger, I heard you ask this a couple times, which I thought was really great. So I'm going to turn around and ask you the same question. He's like, uh-oh, what's this going to be? Looking at this film, what do you like in your work in this film, and what are you unsure about?
Well, as I said earlier, I'm unsure of some of the scenes now, how I lit them, and some of it I feel is quite overlit. But actually, it looks. I don't mean to say this rudely, but on digital, it's not quite so overlit. It's the print is a bit bright. It was a very good print. It's a bit red, but anyway. No, I kind of, I'm sitting there, I don't really get proud of my work, but I'm really pleased to have been part of a film that I think is, it affects me. I was pretty torn up watching it.
I was too. All right, I have a few audience questions here. This is from Grant Dawson. He says, I'm a high school cinema teacher. What are specific wow moments during your younger years that opened your eyes to what film can do? Also, any advice for young film viewers to become more empathetic viewers?
I don't know, wow moments for me was, I was in a little film society in Torquay, and they were showing a few films, and they showed Peter Watkins' War Game, and that was a wow moment if you've ever seen that. Especially this was the 60s, and we were all about to get annihilated by nuclear weapons.
And also, when you were seeing it, didn't two ladies faint in the audience?
Yeah, they had to cut it for a while because two women in the front row fainted. You know, they were used to watching, I don't know, Sound of Music or something.
Oh, God.
James, what about you?
Well, I don't know how you become a more empathetic viewer. Either you let it yourself go and go into the film, or you don't. Maybe watch better movies. I don't know.
I could go on about movies, but I distinctly remember watching La Jetée and thinking, you don't have to move the camera.
Full stop.
Yeah. And also, Once Upon a Time in the West is just so amazing because it's so
good.
And the music.
There's so many, aren't there? I mean, come on, you know. I remember watching Strangelove with my brother, and we lived about 5-6 miles from town, I guess 5 miles, and we were walking home in the rain, just singing "Johnny Comes Marching Home." I mean, it was like, wow, that was a real. They're all nuclear war stories, though.
Yeah, right. Says something about you.
It's a theme. This question is from Lily. Who are your favorite traditional artists, and have they influenced your shot design?
Well, we like Edvard Munch.
Yeah, Edvard Munch.
Yeah, his composition is great.
Oh, Edvard Munch. Oh, Edvard Munch.
Got it. So this is from Carolyn and Matt. What makes you decide to work with a director that you haven't worked with before, and what has made you decide to work with him again?
Well, I think passion, if they have a passion for what they're doing and you feel like they do have a view, because basically you're following the director's view. So if they're back and forth about what the movie is, that's not going to make a very good movie. So if they're passionate and they're not there because of the paycheck, but they're there to make the movie, that's who we want to work with, basically. And I forget what the other question was.
But yeah, I mean, there's people you get on with and there's people you don't.
Right, yeah.
You know, I mean, obviously done films with directors I've not worked with a second time. I mean, I couldn't say I got on with Andrew all that well. At certain times, I mean, it's creatively, you can come into conflict. I mean, we ended up fine, but, you know, I'm not sure we'd work together again. And there's nothing personal. It's just people are different, aren't they?
It's also when you're working, you've got to communicate a lot, and you know that there are just certain people that you're trying to communicate with, but you're just on different, it's not levels, but different planes or something, and you just don't quite get what they're trying to say to you, and it's not their fault, it's probably your fault for not understanding, but you really have to have that communication if you're going to create something together.
Also, I think a big thing for us, I mean, for me in particular, I suppose, is that I don't like to just shoot a lot of footage. I don't like to shoot with multiple cameras. I mean, okay, so when I first worked with Joel and Ethan on Barton Fink, they'd called this director for a recommendation or not, and this director said, he doesn't like second units. He likes to operate himself. He doesn't like zoom lenses. He wants to shoot with one camera. What else did he have against me? And Joel said to me years later, he said, you know, this guy said everything that he thought was like derogatory, but it was everything we wanted to hear of a cameraman.
So it's just about, you know, finding the right collaborators, for sure.
And zoom lenses.
And zoom lenses. So this is a question about Sicario, but I think it's a good question just in general. But this idea of how do you build tension in a scene with the shot? So they're talking about the Border Patrol scene, but I feel like that is such a huge part of this film as well. There's just so much tension. And when you're looking at the characters' faces, like who knows who's in danger, what's going to happen. So how do you use the frame to build that tension?
There's so many different ways of doing it. And also in the cutting, if you hold a shot, that starts to make people tense. And you're going, oh, wait, why are we staying on this?
No, I mean, watch Tarkovsky's Stalker. I mean, the shots, there's nothing happening, and the shot holds and holds and holds, and it becomes so tense, it becomes hard to watch, because it's really interesting, yeah. Well, but it's so much, isn't it? It's so much about performance, and you know, when you're on Casey sitting in the room there, and he's thinking about whether to shoot Jesse or not, I mean, it's like, yeah, it's so tense. I mean, so much. It's a combination of, performance and situation, and maybe it's framing, but the length of the how much you hold the shot. I mean, sometimes you'll push in, sometimes you'll pull back. That will create tension. It's context.
And then, for instance, on Prisoners, there's this one shot where the camera just pushes into a tree. Why? I mean,
I'm still asking that, really.
Yeah, it's got nothing to do with the scene, but it just adds so much tension.
Anybody got any ideas? What was it?
So my final question for you all. It's just been an absolutely incredible 4 days being with you, and I know that our students have gotten so much out of it. I'm curious just... in your experience of working with them, because to me, I saw so much joy in you spending time with the students, and you sort of said this earlier, but I feel like it's about passion. Like that's why you keep doing what you're doing, and sort of instilling that passion or identifying that passion in yourself and in others and who you want to work with. What was something that you saw in the last 4 days that surprised you or tickled you? One of my favorite things about this week, Roger, was seeing this little smirk that you get when something kind of tickles you. And I saw quite a bit working with the students. So can you just talk a little bit about what that experience was like? Because I feel like this is a huge part of who you are, is giving back. And we're just the lucky ones that get to be the benefactors of that.
Oh, we get a lot out of it, too. It's wonderful to be able to talk about what you love to do. And it was wonderful to talk to people that are so enthusiastic and had really good questions. And it also makes you realize, because there were a lot of just set questions too that were asked, and it makes you realize how much you've been through, and if we can warn someone against, like, or tell them how to suggest something and not get their head snapped off, I'm all for that. You know? Yeah.
Yeah, it's often the little things, what somebody did with the light, and just go, oh, that's interesting.
Well, thank you so much for coming and being a part of this. And
Sure.